Welcome to Get Growing. Get Growing is a program of Vashon Island Growers Association, lovingly known as VIGA. We are here to encourage you, inspire you, and support you in growing anything and everything. Herbs, flowers, food, peas. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Get Growing. I'm Karen Biondo at Labiondo Farm and Kitchen.
Michelle Crawford, Pacific Potager Farm and Nursery.
And we're here today at Forest Garden Farm with farmers Lisa Hasselman.
Hello. Yeah.
And her husband, who's in the greenhouse working very hard, and our videographer, Jennifer Hawk, and our videography assistant, Marilee Runyon. Today, we're going to talk about flowers, and we have a very special guest with Noni from Noni's Farm and Garden, or Noni's Garden, a fabulous dahlia grower. And we're going to talk all about how to grow flowers, and we hope you'll grow some. So Lisa is going to give us a tour of a teensy bit of this farm, which is grown in the last, how many years?
We've been here about 5 years.
5 years.
Astounding. Astounding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So take us away,
All right.
and let us know where we are right now.
Okay, so we're kind of in the center of our farm and where we started the farm. So
On the angle.
on the angle, we are trying to go with the topography because we're on a little bit of a slope. And we have moved more towards uniform straight beds because
That works.
because you need to have like all the irrigation cut and the fabric. We use fabric for weed suppression and water retention, but we move it every crop so that we don't create too much of a home for the voles. Well, I could just keep it.
Speaking of fabric,
Yeah.
tell us about these holes.
Yeah,
What and why and how.
Yes, well, our burn templates are right over there, so we'll pick them up as we go and I'll just show you. But we made these metal plates with holes in them, and we got the idea from Florette. I just read it there because she really has shared a lot of knowledge with folks. But we burn the holes on the fabric, and then they last, I've heard, for 20, 30 years. So it's a good way to reuse, and we did it for weed suppression initially, but it's really also for water retention. That's a big thing here in the Northwest. We are very dry throughout the summer.
What?
And it makes a
Dry?
Yes.
In the Northwest?
Yes,
And,
so
and
dry.
using the flame weeder or propane burner to make these holes keeps them from fraying. So you can just reuse and reuse this without it decaying. It's
Exactly.
really brilliant.
Do not cut them. Do not cut them with scissors, because then you get all the little strings and it'll just add to the plastic content of our earth.
And it will haunt you forever.
Yeah.
Do you roll this up at the end of the year, or does it stay in place?
We fold them.
Yeah.
All those pens in your pockets?
Very important.
Very important. And you also look like middle management.
Very important.
Let's-
You need a guard. So Sharpies will bleach in the sun in
Yes.
less than a month. You won't be able to read your tags, so don't use a Sharpie. There's garden markers. This is the only thing that I've been able to find. And I don't, I hate advertising things that are probably horrible for the environment, but they really work. And I don't know if they are. Garden markers for plant tags, and then I do use Sharpies just for writing on things that aren't going to be in the sun. And then you have to just have a pen for writing notes.
Yeah. Shall we
Such
walk?
a geek. Let's walk.
Walk and talk.
Okay, let's walk and talk. So we have a few things. We have
yes.
a ranunculus bed that's blooming. These are corms that like the cool early spring, so they went in the fall.
They're so gorgeous.
They're so gorgeous, and they open up with all these beautiful petals. This is columbine that's been growing since last year. It's a perennial and also a native. And then the bed behind it, which I think
what is that?
that is it's 4 layers of different kinds of bulbs, and that really helps with the weeds, right? To have this is something that I've really been trying to work on. Those are alliums. So it's already had you can see the daffodils, tulips, and muscari bloom, and now it's about to bloom with the alliums. And then once those are done, then I tuck in a flower like amaranth that is a hot season flower that's going to have winter kill. So it's going to die over the winter so that the spring bulbs will come through.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, a lot of the farming that you see, all the good stuff, that's my husband Chris, and I'm
Okay.
just, you know, fencing on
Okay.
around it.
But so impressive. So you are taking, Chris, what variety of peas is this?
Those are sugar snap from Uprising seeds.
Okay, they are impressive.
Yeah, we've never had anything like this.
Yeah.
It's a,
Yeah, they seem-
it's just,
So you're taking these peas to market.
oh,
we will. Yeah. They're
And
not
what about all
quite
these
any-
poppies along the peas?
well, that's how I garden.
Those
Is
are
I do let
companion
things go to
plants.
seed. They're companion plants. They bring in a lot of
Yeah,
bees,
and all
and we
the
have been
insects.
weeding, but you know, the nasturtiums are a really good aphid trap.
Yeah, yeah,
you know, and the poppies I have been pulling, but leaving a few to get big. This isn't improvised. It's using the Hort Nova, is what this white netting is called.
It's
Yeah.
very reusable year after year. It doesn't
Very
deteriorate.
reusable.
Right.
Exactly. And usually it's used horizontally. I've got a bed out there to keep things from falling over, but
Like
we used it
raspberries?
vertically. We haven't used it on raspberries, but flowers, like these bachelor buttons,
Yeah.
probably could have used a little
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
before they got too tall.
And before we leave here, tell us about your beautiful braided remay.
This
Which
is-
many of us just roll up into a ball and let the rats eat.
And it gathers ants
And rats.
wasps.
Ants and rats.
Yeah.
The rats were, or mice or whatever, nesting, but I just saw this on Instagram probably. I'm a little worried it's shading my lilies. I'm trying to look for someone to blame. This was an experiment to have more flowers on Mother's Day, which was last weekend, right? And none of them have bloomed yet. So
Maybe they'll be ready for Father's Day.
maybe. And you know, they look great. So I'm not, and that's one thing I've learned about my climate is we are colder up here. We are higher elevation, I think, is part of it, and we're on a ridge. So we are definitely a couple weeks slower than like what the seed packets say or what. So you got to kind of know your climate a little bit to know how long things are going to take before they bloom.
So you planted them in milk crates.
These are growing in
like
crates. Yeah.
What's this
Teeny
here?
tiny. These are dahlias. These are dahlias that I'm waking up, and just some flower starts. Next to you is a chocolate cosmos, which I actually heard about from Marilee Runyon, because the smell is just so amazing. So I saved, they're one of those, it's just cold enough here that we lose them if they're out in the field, so I have to dig the tubers each year, which allows you to divide them and save them.
See, that is huge on Vashon, and to have
Hi,
locally
Noni.
grown flowers is so cool.
I mean,
it's
so fun.
beyond so cool. So
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
and
very proud of you guys. And Noni, we miss you.
Here's our
on
special
Vashon.
guest today, Noni.
Yeah.
Does Noni have a last name?
Morrison.
Noni Morrison.
Right.
and
Calico
Noni,
Gardens until last year, right?
That's true, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Noni's going to talk to us today about growing dahlias, which I don't think we focused enough on walking through with Lisa. She's got dahlias here.
dahlias all over.
There's
Because
dahlias
I was
everywhere.
so inspired by Noni, who offered to be my mentor when I first got started, and I have just learned so much about dahlias.
Noni, tell me why, or tell us, why dahlias? How did you fall in love with dahlias?
Well, I just started small. I mean, I think it was the ones who grew dahlias here on the island. The Bernie O'Malley
Bernie
and
and-
his wife.
Noreen. Bernie
Yeah,
and
yes,
Noreen.
right. And they were selling flowers uptown, and I stopped
In
by
their
and I
little cart.
started talking
Yeah.
to them, and I bought a few tubers, and my passion for them just kind of bloomed with them. And I kept, then you start talking to other people that are growing them, and they offer you tubers, or they have some to sell, or they'll tell you all about what they like. And then gradually I learned about the national and state groups for dahlias and what they were doing. I started attending Dahlia Club meetings over in Tacoma, and they have a regular kind of program they put you through with all the different little chores of dahlia growing, and learning about people that like to exhibit, which they really get into it. A lot of the really competitive types do that. But for me, I discovered my love for them was just as for arranging them as art objects. And I call them my crayons because I love to paint a picture with dahlias and whatever else I have.
But didn't you also like grow some unique varieties?
Well, that's one of the things you learn when you go to a dahlia club or so is how to grow from seed. And the really interesting thing about growing from seed is that dahlias have octoploid genetics.
Say that again?
Octoploid genetics, which means humans, you have one cell from the mother and one from the father that starts it. Dahlias get 8 from the mother and 8 from the father.
8?
And they can combine in any combination of those. So you never know what you're going to get when you start a bunch of seeds. Basically, you start the seeds and then you pick out what you like out of them.
And then you save those tubers, and then that's
Right.
a variety that you started.
Right, and you name them and you get them out there to your public.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether
But
through
people love that at the market that you did that.
Yes, and that gets you all tied into like the National Dahlia Growers Associations and the international ones, and it's a whole world out there for dahlia growers. Or you could just make bouquets and give them to your friends.
That's what I was going to ask next, is
Yes.
for the average backyard gardener who wants to have beautiful flowers and wants to have dahlias,
Yes.
how should we start?
Oh, I'd get maybe 4 to 6 different varieties. You don't want what they call the dinner plates. And dinner plate is a terrible name invented by the sellers of Dutch dahlia tubers. Well, you get the competitive dahlia growers.
Yeah.
And they like those huge ones and see how big they can get them.
And they're
But-
sometimes, like, they are fun to see in the garden.
Yes.
And that's, you know, it's just a difference between cut flower growers, maybe, you know, dinner plate dahlias are not great cuts because they're so
No.
big.
Yeah.
you
And they
know?
wilt too fast. They can't support all the petals with the water from a vase.
So we get ourselves some tubers. They're called tubers.
Tubers, they are not
What do they
bulbs.
look like? Yeah, maybe you can go
Dahlia
through their
tubers.
anatomy.
Yeah. So I have some now that I bought from someone on the island, and I have not planted them yet, which makes me feel nervous every day. Is it too late?
No, it's just time now to start
Time now.
planting
Okay.
them. Yes.
So
You want they say the soil should be 60 degrees. On Vashon, you wouldn't have time for them to bloom by the time our soil gets to 60. So plant about Mother's Day or thereafter.
Okay.
The years I would have needed a rowboat to get to my garden rows, and, you know, at that Mother's Day. So I typically finish planting around the first week in June.
Okay. That's
So we
good.
have our tuber, and what are we looking for? Which end is up? Which end
Okay.
is down?
This is where your growth is coming from here.
Always.
Yeah.
It always comes
Always from the little collar that was part of the stem last year.
from that. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And if you could see, there's a teeny tiny, another little green dimple here.
Uh-huh.
That could be another stalk. We call them eyes.
Like the eye of a potato.
Yeah, except that they're on the collar that was part of the
Okay.
original stem.
Okay.
And
I
this
don't
is
think
their
that little bump
food
is.
source, right?
That is right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's at this end of your dahlia as long as it's not rotting.
Oh.
They
So a
will-
big body is not necessary, or a small body doesn't matter much.
You don't want a really big body because you know what happens?
That's what I've been saying for years.
The dahlia, yes. Well, it's true with dahlias too. They have it all stored there. They don't need to grow for food.
Oh.
So most of us dahlia
cool.
growers that have been doing it for a while, we might cut off 2/3 of that tuber. Let it air dry.
Really?
Or, yeah.
And these are, you have to tell them about this tool because it makes all the
Every
difference
flower
in the world.
grower uses these.
What is these called?
They are called, remember,
Dahlia
red
cutters?
and white handles.
Okay.
And most dahlia sellers, you can get them through them, or you can look on the internet.
Okay. Okay.
They sell for about $20, so
Okay.
give or take a little. Okay, so I'm just going to cut through it like it was a potato here.
I'll be darned.
And
You
then
wanna
the
get a
other
nice
part
flat
just
cut.
goes in compost?
Yeah. We've discovered that instead of the expensive fungicides and all those chemicals, sprinkle with cinnamon. Let it air dry.
Cinnamon?
Cinnamon.
And let it air
Cinnamon
dry.
is an anti-fungal.
Yeah, right, it is. So how, like a couple days? Or?
Yeah, just so it kind of
That's
heals
so
over a
cool.
little.
Oh,
And
thank
then
you.
you'll want to plant it about 4 to 6 inches down, because it's going to make roots out here from this end too, and they will anchor it in the ground. So you want it far enough down that the little rootlets don't dry out.
Right.
So the plant and the roots come out of that same little
They
neckline.
do. We call that the eye, where it came out there.
And that's the biggest thing when I'm trying to figure out what's going to be a good tuber is it doesn't matter how big or how great that body looks. It's all about having an eye.
That's
and
right.
those are really hard to see often.
Especially early in the year when
Yeah,
you want
like
to
this
start
is
them.
an example.
How do you see
But-
it on that?
Well, here's my trick. You see what looks like a little tiny
That's why
pimple?
you're here.
Yes. Just kind of gently scratch the surface, and if it looks red and juicy and growing or green,
It's a
that's
viable
an
eye.
eye.
So
Yes.
juiciness.
Right. If you scratch it and it's just nothing, then it's not going to grow. So you
There's
got,
a lot of
well,
little
that's
bumps
why,
on there.
but-
Then
yeah.
it's midwinter and you're in your, little workshop and you're like, is that an eye? So I like, one thing too is if you wait till spring and you warm them up a little bit, then if they start growing, they're a lot easier to see.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And what will you do with all this extra body stuff?
Okay, you really only want 1 tuber per planting.
Okay.
So you
Magic
look,
tool.
yeah, you look for one that has an eye.
Okay, so
like
this
I
is
don't
left at
see
the
an
end
eye
of
on
the
it.
last season?
Yeah, this has been
And you
stored
only
over the
want
winter.
one of those?
Oh, first thing I would do, cut off the old roots. They're not going to grow again.
Okay.
Clean your tuber up a little.
Clean it up. All right.
Yeah, now see how much better that
Yeah,
looks
that,
to work
I
with.
already feel calmer.
Right. Okay. Now you want to look here where they divide, and you want an eye on each tuber. So I think I have identified that. Yes, that is an eye right there. So they just look a little pimple, kind of. And you just want to split. Now, every tuber in a clump won't necessarily be a producer, so. And the old one very seldom regrows.
Now, how do you know which one's the old one there?
I don't think
Probably
the
cut
old
it
one's
off
on
when
there.
you
Yeah,
dug
it's
it.
cut
Okay.
off.
Yeah. They would tend to have more problems with storage in the winter. and-
Okay. So the one that
Okay.
rots is probably the old one.
It
Yeah.
looks kind of like a raisin.
Okay.
Compared to the others.
Okay.
So I just kind of give that a nice blunt cut there. You've got your eye right here.
Yeah.
And then you just let that dry. Sprinkle it with cinnamon if you want. Here you've got a nice growing eye on that piece. Okay, we still got kind of a mess here, but look right down in here. You can see this little sprout taking off. And you can see
I
a
love
new
this.
eye
I want it
coming.
so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the eyes tend to reflect the color of the bloom, so this will probably be it won't be a white one, because you'd have green eye then. Give them
You've
a nice
become
clean
so familiar
cut.
with these.
Wow.
I am.
Yeah.
So at some point, are you going to cut away the excess bodies here?
No, not unless you have one of these really big ones like this.
Ah, I see.
And they will refuse to grow because they've got everything stored in them.
Oh.
Just cut away 2/3 of the tuber and
They'll be stressed. It's like we're not watering your tomatoes mid-season. Like, come
Yes.
on, produce. You're gonna die. Be careful.
okay, I'm trying to save this bit here that I can see as a good eye. So let's cut off the old stalk. You don't want old stalk because it can harbor funguses, molds, slugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dahlias are magnets for slugs, aren't they?
They are. The first thing you do when you plant them is to bait for slugs.
What do you use? Do you use Sluggo?
You can.
Or
I actually like my own mix of ammonia, 1/3 ammonia and 2/3 water. Household ammonia.
Spray bottle or?
Just spray it every few days or after rain.
Okay.
The ammonia actually turns to nitrogen fertilizer for them. It doesn't harm them at all.
1/3 ammonia, 2/3 water, sprayed every couple days.
Yeah.
And the ammonia is
Right.
actually good for the soil.
Yep.
Yes.
Love it.
Hot diggity dog. Hot diggity
This is
dahlia.
like so cool.
Okay,
You know,
now.
Noni, one thing that is totally still blows me away, which I have really lost track of, is how will you track your dahlia varieties, which can be really hard. Can you talk about how you do that a little bit? Like in the field, like how do you keep them marked?
Oh, okay. The first thing you want to do is make sure you've labeled all your tubers before you plant them.
Oh,
And you have a marker.
now
I
which
like
marker is that, Lisa?
You can do Sharpie because it's not in the sun.
I would use a
think-
broad tip one, but you
Yeah.
can
Okay.
use
Better
these.
one,
It's just that if your
Oh, here you go.
tuber is a little soft, yeah, they tend to
She has them
cut
all.
into them. So did I see that this is this Fidalgo Julie here
It
too?
is.
Okay. So, names are very important to dahlia people. Even if names are not important to you in your life, names are how we trade tubers.
So
They're
that
how we
stays
describe them
on
to other
there even
people.
when it's under the ground?
Yes, you should
That's
be able
so
to read
cool.
that when you dig them in the fall.
Wow.
And when
That's
you
another
divide them
thing I did
next
not
time.
know. I
Yeah.
did not know. Wow.
Okay, so I would just cut off some of this old stuff here now because we've got some nice eyes right there on that bit of the
Yeah.
neck.
Yeah.
So that one is ready to dry. So out of that little clump, you got not the mother. Well, no, that wasn't the mother. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll typically get 6 to 8 or so, except for, well, some of the bigger varieties you might be lucky to get 3 or 4, but they're going to multiply, and each of them has the value of the original one. If you want to sell them or trade them, keep that in mind. If you paid $25 for a tuber, which is not unusual this year, and you get 6 tubers off of it, and you could sell sell 5 of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
they can make you some money.
A young friend of mine, she got her grandmother's tuber collection, and she cut off all these parts, thinking that was the way to do it, and she was heartbroken. She said, "I spoiled them all."
You know, she might have been able to take those and bury them in dirt if she still had them.
Right, yeah, that was
She
a-
threw them in the compost heaps.
then they'll
My
go.
compost always grows beautiful
Oh,
dahlias.
of course.
But just like these are important tips. It's so important. Yeah, thank you.
We
Okay,
have our
so-
tubers.
Yep, and you've got the name written on each
got our
of them.
name. We
And
put-
this is important because when you dig them in the fall, you
That's
can still
amazing.
see the name.
Because they're not in the sunshine, the Sharpie lasts.
But you still flag, right?
I do.
Let's go back to we cut them up. We put them 4 to 6 inches. We've watered them. They send up their little sprouty bits
Right.
here.
And while they're doing that, they'll also be making little roots here that'll anchor them in the earth. And they may put out roots from here, but these are not important.
Okay, cool. All right, now what? We grow our
Okay.
dahlias, just let them rip. Spray them with ammonia every 3 or 4 days. 2/3 ammonia.
No, 1/3 ammonia.
1/3 ammonia, 2/3 water. Spray bottles. Spray them every 3 or 4 days, and let them grow.
Right, and this is what you'll see next, if you're lucky, which you usually will be.
Okay.
So.
And
Okay, now important. Dahlias, when they get to be 4 to 6 to 7 feet tall,
yes,
the wind can cause you a real problem. And it may not cause you that trouble until they're blooming gloriously in the fall and the first fall rains hit. And you'll come out and they will all be flat on the ground, usually broken off from the tuber.
And slugs will be having a
Yes.
flower piece. Yeah.
So when you plant, also put a stake in with them, or put something like Lisa has here with the
Here, I
strings
brought
tied
some
across
over
the...
behind you. Do you use these T-posts? Is that what you usually use?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just get
Or
the
rebar.
shorter, yep, or rebar. And then you would just put it, like, most in a row.
Yeah, usually in a row, although some people will stake every one, but...
can we?
Yep.
So here's some dahlias here.
Yep.
And
There's
you-
a row of dahlias. So I am going to go, once these other flowers are done, I will go and put in these T-posts about every 10 feet. And then I will use a twine
Right.
to corral them, is what
Yes.
I would
Right,
call
like
it.
corral the
weave,
dahlias.
a weave
Yep.
kind of.
Which is kind of a weave. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a box around it and then an X. through the box with 10 feet
Okay.
across, because a lot of them will just fall over sideways.
That's right. And you want it, I start when mine are about this tall with getting that bottom row on. And then as they grow, I'll add a second row, and then I'll usually add a third row because some of them will be like 6 feet tall.
Wow.
And you want to leave the room to kind of sway gently in the breeze, but not room enough to really get going.
Whack off, yeah.
Talk to us about, either one of you, about pinching the center buds. Is that a good idea, bad idea? Two schools of thought?
Okay, for show growers,
Yes.
who are quite a different species than I am,
Uh-huh.
they may pinch down to get one main stalk, so all the energy will go into making one glorious flower or 2 or 3 for their season. As a cut flower grower, I want lots and lots of them, so I like a number of stems. If it had way too many, like 15 stems coming out of it, then I might get it down to 6 or so of them. And the size that your flower grows to also would help determine that. Like a really short one doesn't need to be pinched back as much as a tall grower. But pinching can stop one from being way too high. Some of them will grow to 7 or 8 feet actually in our climate. If you can't reach that high, pinch them back when they get to what, you say maybe 4 or 5 feet.
Lisa, do you have a different take on all of that?
No, I mean, I love knowing that like understanding that the different plants are doing it. I am just really trying to grow on a production level, so I just get them in and I cut them when they bloom.
That's pretty much my
That's
method
about the
too.
level that I'm at. But I love the understanding if you're going for a really beautiful
Single specimen
single
or so.
flower, then you take the side ones off, and that'll bloom earlier and stronger.
Oh.
But I just let them go.
But for bouquets, and you're cutting them, and so they're continually wanting to
Making
grow
new
more.
ones.
And if we want them mainly as garden ornaments, if we cut that center one off,
There you go.
that will
Yeah.
create
The
branching.
garden bush, yes.
Yes.
If you're a home gardener and your goal is like this beautiful show of a lot of flowers,
Yes.
then you want to top it,
Okay.
which is just cut the center off at some point in its early growth, and that's going to send up a bunch of little side shoots
Got
that
it.
are going to produce flowers.
So if your garden is the vase, then cut the tops and let them branch sideways.
Yep.
I love it.
Actually, I never bother with it much because I cut the first flower that blooms and then
Oh,
it starts
it
setting
doesn't
out
work.
below
Got
that.
Yeah,
Got it.
In real life, when
Right.
you're cutting.
So it doesn't matter. You could
Not a
pinch
lot.
it now or you can pinch it later.
Yeah, the only time it really matters if you're a very short gardener and you want to keep your plants short. Or you think that
Or
you might
you're
be
in a
going to show.
competition.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So, okay, so we grew our flowers, we picked our bouquets. It's September, they're blooming. It gets to be October and they start to fade, they start to stop flowering.
You have frost predicted.
We have frost. Now what do we do? Toward the end of the season and at the end of the season?
Some people say you have to wait till frost to dig them. You don't, not in our climate. Do you really want to be out with the wind howling around you and the rain pouring on you while you dig up 50 plants?
Oh.
I don't think so.
And like black foliage that's molding to the ground.
Yeah, right,
No.
you've got
Okay.
mildew really badly at the end of the season.
Are you suggesting that we can pull our dahlias before they get all black and yucky and
You definitely
rotty?
can, and it is a myth that they have to freeze first.
That's good to know.
They are set up to survive. Dahlias want to grow, and as the days get shorter, nature tells them start getting ready. Put all your energy down into those tubers you're making.
Oh. So is that when the tubers get fat?
Yeah.
That's why I get fat in the winter.
Right, yeah. They are
Me too.
storing
Me too.
carbohydrates
I
to live off until
Yeah.
recovery.
Oh,
so
Just
much
like we
permission.
do.
I do that in the spring though too. So
Oh. Okay. All right. So we've got all our carbohydrates in the tubers. It's not freezing yet, but we can dig them up.
We can dig them up, and that actually saves them from being exposed to a lot of rotting in the old stems. Get those old stems off. I'd cut them about so far off so you have a nice little handle for your clump.
That is such a good, and you've got the thing tied to that handle.
Your flag, got your flag on.
It's
Before
so
you
important.
dig,
Yep.
make sure you've got your tag. A tuber without a name on it, well, this one now has a name on it. A tuber without a name on it is trash.
Trash.
Oh, no.
You can't trade them because you're not sure which plant it came off of.
But you could plant it, you could give it away.
You can do that, but you have no idea what you're giving.
True.
So, always label your tubers as you divide.
Okay, so we've dug them up. Now what?
Okay, let's see. Then you cut off. Let's see, what do we have? We don't have a good example, do we?
Yeah.
We cut off the old stalk right down where it starts to divide into the plants here. You want to leave enough that it'll have room for these little eyes to come out on it with your next year's growth.
I do have an example. Should I go get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
What do you do? Like, do they need extra prep as a vase flower? Like, what do you do to make them last long in the
okay.
vase?
When I'm picking for bouquet making,
Yeah.
I pick them into, or after I'm finished picking them, I will put them into a bucket with the hottest tap water I can run.
Okay.
Really?
And actually, you know, this has been studied quite well. That's something to keep the things flowing through the
It's so
stems.
counterintuitive to put them in
It
hot
is.
water.
But you
Yeah.
put them in hot water and then put them in a cool place to cool down.
Okay.
And Swan Island does the same thing. You know, there are big tuber sales down in Oregon.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's a very useful tip for everyone growing dahlias, which I did not know. So thank you.
They run out of the stored sugars in a bouquet. So I use a little, like a tablespoon of sugar, I think it was, in the formula for your homemade vase water is like sugar, an acid like vinegar, or some people even use like lime soda, which has both the.
Is aspirin a myth?
Pretty much, I think. It may give, well, it's an acid too, I think, so it might help that way. But the most important part with a bouquet is clean vase and clean water. If your water starts getting smelly and murky, change it.
Yeah.
And never put from an old vase that hasn't been washed. Bacteria are what kill your bouquet.
Right.
As will setting it in a sunny window kill them.
Yes.
It will fry
yes.
them.
Yes.
Yes. What pests, other than slugs in the beginning, what other pests do dahlias fall prey to? Anything? Are they?
We usually have a bout of aphids about in the spring. I found the best thing to do is just wait a week or two and the ladybugs will arrive and take care of them.
Oh.
You can just break off those little ends and just tromp them underfoot if it really bothers you.
Yeah, but a lot of pests are like they have flushes and
Yeah.
there's response, and you don't have to go apoplectic to take care of it.
There are, the only problem really with other bugs and stuff on the dahlias other than unsightly holes in your flowers would be if they transport virus from one plant to another. We do have some viruses that we want to worry about. And they will show up by kind of mottled foliage or what they call vein clearing, where the veins through the leaves will turn yellow and the rest of the leaf is green.
These are ugly. Don't judge. That's why they're
That is a clump.
Fast forward
Yep.
to November?
Yep, November as they come
Okay.
out of the ground. They'll look something like this, but these were in the ground 2 years, which is why they get really, really tangled, which
And
is
so
why
many
I
of
still
them
have
there.
them. There's so many of them,
Uh-huh.
but you would still do the same thing that Noni did, where you're going for the eyes.
Lisa, where's your flag?
Well, that's why they're
Ah.
not cut up, because they lost their flags.
Okay, so I just tackle this by first you could go through and cut off all
Move
of
those
these.
other ones so they don't get mixed up.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
And would you break these apart in November?
You know, there's actually two schools of thought on that. Some of them say it's easier to do in the spring when they're starting for regrowth. The other thing is, though, that you want to get out anything that's going to be causing rot or any
Sure.
bugs that are lurking
But
in
you
them.
can't really use those little scissors to get through that.
Oh, I use these for most things. I have a pair of folding lopping shears that I love for dividing the big clumps.
Wow.
As they pack up about that long, and you can take them to.
But the benefit
With
of
you.
those is they have the long is that
Handle.
fulcrum
Yeah, so you can
handle,
get in
so
there.
you can
Yeah,
cut
get
harder.
closer.
Like
Once you cut all those little bits
Mm-hmm.
off, it's smaller.
Yeah.
You can do a surprising amount with these scissors. If they were the only tool you had, you could still grow dahlias. So. Okay, now I would cut these down to like right here. You can see the top of a tuber, and you can
Yeah.
see that it has a growth eye. So just whack off the old one right above that. Sometimes you just have to guess where that would be when you're at this stage.
And most clumps are not this ugly and gnarly. This is one that's just giving her a challenge.
And you know, if you do it in the fall, then they're still a bit juicy and much
Yeah.
easier to cut through.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get there, all is not lost.
All is not lost.
I think that's the important thing.
Yep.
Exactly. That's the important thing. If you didn't do it in the fall, you can
it
do
in the
it
spring.
whenever.
Yeah.
Plants
Now,
wanna grow.
we have a whole elaborate ways of storing these over the winter. I like to use wood chips or peat moss, which a lot of growers don't like to use. But
And why is that?
you want something that's going to hold a little moisture,
Ah,
but not too much moisture.
got it.
And it also will insulate them against temperature changes. And you'd also cut off a little scrawny piece like that. Isn't
Lisa,
gonna
what do you
grow
store your
well.
dahlia tubers in?
You know, I've had the most luck with peat moss.
Oh.
And I would love to
I did
have-
on the island, yes.
Yep.
Now-
I tried, this is vermiculite, which is expensive.
It's
and
also
it's drier.
a finite resource.
Yeah. So I've tried cocoa coir. Peat moss seems to work the best.
Yeah, they grow great roots in cocoa coir during storage, which you don't really want.
What I've lost to over the winter is usually things that are exposed, like the side of it is above the peat moss or something. That's what gets the rot because it's exposed to the temperature swings.
And are you storing them in your greenhouse, in your garage, and your porch? Like where?
They're in the shop, just in a enclosed space to protect from rodents, and then changes in temperature. And then if we get a hard frost, I move them into the office and put the heater on real low because they
Yeah.
don't want to be frozen. So you do have to protect them from wide temperature swings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And you also want to check them 2 or 3 times over the
And,
winter.
and dahlias are not grown all over the country. This more in the Northwest.
Well, we're
places.
teaching people how to do it all over the country,
Yeah,
but
'cause-
the hot, dry, like Arizona, areas like that, they have real problems with lack of moisture over the winter.
Yeah.
In Maine, they have the same thing. The air gets very cold and dry. Although my daughter, who lives in Maine, has learned to store them in her laundry room, which is a step down and has it's a little cooler and moister. So.
Look at you. You're rescuing that.
it's amazing
That
to
wad.
watch this happen.
It brings some order into it. We get rid of the chaos, and then we can tell what we're doing here. And we can get rid of tubers that just
This
don't
is
look
a
like
life
they're gonna
lesson, people. Get rid of the chaos and see what
Right.
you're dealing with.
Find the healthy bits in your life.
So my guess is what you're doing, you're not as, because there's so many pieces there, it's okay to kind of just cut through, and you may sacrifice a few,
Yeah.
but with so many opportunities, you'll be okay. Is
That's
that
right,
Because you got to
yes.
get the thing apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you couldn't just plant that.
You don't want to just keep replanting a clump from year to year. Besides, then you wouldn't be able to share with your friends or sell them to other people, or you want
So-
to take off ones that have been eaten on by something.
Speaking of, you don't want to keep growing that clump, what about people who don't dig up their dahlias?
Eventually, they get weaker and weaker. Too many stems, or rodents will find them and
Yeah.
have a delicious
Okay.
lunch.
So
This
is it
is a big rodent here. I bet some dahlias have been eaten.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it okay if you like let them go for a year or two and
It
dig them
really
up,
is.
and
You
then
can
next
dig 'em-
year I'll dig them up
Yeah. They just won't be as easy to divide.
because they'll be more like this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah,
And the stems might be weaker because there's too many stems. You might actually want to cut out some of the stems when they start growing.
oh, good to know.
Yeah. All right, so now we have as well, I think,
at that.
there we've got
Look at that.
that.
We did it.
And we probably just want to cut through here between a couple of them. There are good resources on the internet. Everyone should know about Dahlia Addict, which is when you're choosing dahlias. Go to dahliaaddict.com, and you can pick them out by the color, by the type of bloom you want, by the, yeah, 'cause, you know, we have different ways to identify them that
And
way.
okay.
And you can find every grower that has them for sale in what you want.
Noni,
Yes?
are you open to emailed questions? In
Oh,
the future?
definitely.
So at the end of this video, we will give everybody's contact information.
That's great. Yes. Look for your local Dahlia Society. Contact them, and somebody there will be just delighted probably to answer your questions, because that's kind of what we do. We
It is
teach.
true, like, yeah.
Oh, you
Gardening
have this.
is collaborative.
You have this wonderful resource over at Point Defiance.
Yeah.
Do you all know
Yes.
what the Dahlia test gardens are?
Yes. Oh my
Okay.
God, they're beautiful.
Okay, but do you understand what's happening there with them?
No.
Tell us.
Okay, they do keep a few rows of known varieties in the back. The rest of them are brand new that are not on the market yet. And this is where growers send their flowers to be judged. And
That's so cool.
they award points. They actually have financial awards from several of them. This is where you get your major advertising from if you're a serious dahlia grower. And places that are well known for a long time, like Holly Hill Dahlias in Oregon, Clearview Dahlias up here in Washington, Les Connell, who has passed away now but was very active for many years here. That's where you find out where to go and what the price will be and what it's classed as and how well it did in the test gardens.
Lisa, thank you so much
Yes.
for hosting us today.
This is so much
Amazing.
fun. It's so much fun
Amazing.
having you all here and talking flowers.
Marilee, thank you for being an assistant.
You're
to
so
our
welcome. I
videographer.
learned so much.
know.
I just feel like I was
Awesome.
over rewarded.
So grow some dahlias, grow anything, and we'll be back. Bye for now.
Beginning. There's not enough flower growers on Vashon. There's not enough vegetable growers. We need more and more and more. But I've always appreciated that about you. That you answer any question. I really, really admire that. It's been a gift to all of us.
Oh, well, I love doing it too, and that's why.
That's good.
Truthfully, sometimes at the end of a market day and you still had a few left and you would send them home with us.
Yeah,
And I was
I
like,
know.
oh, somebody loves me.
Right, it would have been horrible to have to take them home myself.
I know, but I mean, they meant a lot, you know? It was
Yeah.
very wonderful.
It was. Yeah.
Great.
So we're so glad you came back and that you'll come again.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, good deal.